Hey, welcome friends. So this is the re-recording of the beginning of the workshop. And I'm not sure at what point I hit the recording button thanks to a friend that said, Sherry, the recording. But I had to make sure you heard the very beginning because this sets the whole stage for what we talked about. So I wanted to come back on, and there may be a little gap between the story and when we hit the recording, and I apologize for that. But I wanted to make sure that I did share the TomTom meter story with you, those of you that have to watch the recording of the Find Your Edge workshop webinar. So here's the story. So in 2007, my husband and I bought a 19-foot sailboat for $900. We wanted to see if we enjoyed sailing. Friends of ours had took us out on a sailboat, and my husband had grown up on a little pond. Their family had a camp where he would go out and sail on like one of those little day sailor type things, you know, the one person and his dog were the only ones that fit on it. I had no sailing experience at all, but we had enjoyed the day out with friends. So we thought, let's give it a try. Let's test it out. So I had no skills. I didn't trust my husband's skills and had no confidence in the boat because I was sure it was going to lean over and we were going to flip upside down and go into the water. And when I got nervous and I got afraid and the boat started heeling over is what it's called when it's leaning way over, I would start yelling my husband's name. His name is Tom. And it would sound something like this. It would go, Tom, 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 until he would do what he had to do to right the boat back up again and assure me that we're not going to tip over, but I didn't believe him. So there were many times when we were out in the water that it got a little testy, it got a little edgy because, again, no confidence, no skills, no trust. But we did enjoy it. We loved being on the water. We loved the sailing experience. We loved trying to learn how to do it. So the next year, we got a bigger boat. We got a 26-foot sailboat. It cost us $2,000. And yes, you can buy a sailboat for quite cheap because they don't wear out like power boats do. So on the 26-foot sailboat, we spent a lot of time really working on our skill set, really learning how to communicate better. I started trusting him a little more, my husband, that is. This boat was a little sturdier, so it wasn't quite as nerve-wracking for me. But in high winds, and the boat started leaning over again, and we had water on the rail, again, I would feel like we were going to go into the water or I was going to fall in, and you would hear, Tom, 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 until he turned the boat back into the wind and flattened the boat out. And again, my friends dubbed this the TomTom meter. And on high windy days, we'd get back to the docks and they would always ask, did the TomTom meter go off today? And usually, yes, it did. But again, we really enjoyed the sailing experience. So a couple of years ago, we invested in a much bigger boat, a 31-foot Hunter. And by then, our skills were already starting to get better. But when we got the bigger boat, we really spent time working on our skill set, really learning how to adjust the sails just right, moving the traveler, doing all the things that have to be done on a sailboat. And it sounds like a lot of work, but really it's not when you practice it and you learn it. And we love enhancing our skills that way. We had better communication with each other. We realized that the way I like the sails adjusted looked different than the way he liked them adjusted. So we would learn to work with that. We also learned the boat. We learned the vessel. We learned that the way Danu is the boat's name. She's a Celtic goddess. You can look it up. So D-A-N-U. The way Danu responded to the conditions of the wind and the water looked different than some of our other friends' boats. And I would get so frustrated with that at times, like, because I would look at them as like, why aren't we going at the same angle they are? And we couldn't because our boat was different. Our boat had different strengths or weaknesses than their boats did. But what I found was the more my skills increased, the more confidence I had in myself, my husband, and the boat, and the more trust my husband and I had with each other, the TomTom meter rarely went off on the 31-foot sailboat. And Here's the thing. Here's the key I really want you to hear right now is the ironic thing is what I know now that I didn't know back then when we used to heel way over and I would be scared to death was the thing I was most afraid of, that heeling way over actually slows the boat down. When you're heeling way over and you have water on the rail and you're too far over, you decrease the speed of a sailboat. There is a sweet spot for every boat, and it varies boat by boat, usually somewhere between 10, 20 degrees in there, where you're just cruising right along. And the wind conditions are right. If you have your sails adjusted the right way, you have the right skills, you have the trust in your team, and you know your boat, which is how you adjust the sails. You get in this sweet spot where you're cruising right along. And on a sailboat, you might get up to 7, 8 knots. That's pretty fast for a sailboat. And in that sweet spot, you're crushing through the water. You have what my husband calls the bone in her teeth, which means you're leaving like this nice wake behind you. And when you're there, the boat can almost sail herself. So when we got to that space, those days like that, Danu almost sailed herself. We barely had to do anything. And that, my friends, is where I want to take you today. It's where you find your edge, when you can get to that sweet spot for yourself in your business, where you trust your skill set, you trust your team skill set, and you have confidence in yourself, in your selling, not sailing abilities, because you are the vessel for your business. You right here is the vessel, not a boat. You're the vessel. And inside of you are the talents and strengths you need to succeed. So when you put those things together, that's where you can find that sweet spot. That's where you find your edge. And when you get in that place, that edge, that flow, that's where things kind of take a life of its own. But it takes all those things working together to get there. And that's what we spend the rest of the time in the webinar talking about. So now you're caught up with most of what you missed when I didn't hit record. So watch part 2 on the next video.